All right, guys, so here's a quick take on real GDP versus nominal GDP. Um, as you can see, we are looking at the difference between nominal and real. Remember, nominal GDP is like the actual number of GDP. So if it's price times quantity and we have a GDP of 10, that would also be known as the nominal GDP. One of the things you're going to learn is that the nominal GDP doesn't tell us a whole lot of information. So we're more interested in the real GDP. So real GDP is the value of the final goods and services produced in a given year, expressed in terms of prices in a base year. So the base year is very important. The nominal GDP is simply the GDP of the given year. So if we're talking about 2020, it's the amount of output of the finished goods and services multiplied by the prices of those finished goods and services in the same year. Like, so if it's 2018, it's 2018. So that's the difference between real and nominal. In in our in the United States, the GDP is set at a base year, and the base year is 2005. And so one of the things you need to note is that we'll always want to do the current year's output multiplied by the base year's prices. That's how we'll get real GDP. So if we look at this simple chart, and it'll scroll down to it in a minute, everything's laggy. If we look at this simple chart, we have the real GDP compared to the nominal GDP. So we're given the 2005 number. Hopefully it'll move. We're given the 2005 number. That's the base year. Notice that we have C plus I plus G equals Y. This is again where I was telling you how they don't use the NX or the net exports. Notice that we have consumption, investment, government, and that gives us the Y. So we have t-shirts, we have 10 of them multiplied by 5, which is going to give us our 50 expenditure. We have our computer chips, which is 3, get that erased, which is 3 multiplied by 10, which will give us our 30. Security services, which is 1 multiplied by 20 gives our 20. So our base year expenditures are 100. Okay, so GDP in the base year is 100. Now here's a big thing you need to know for test is in the base year, GDP is nominal and real. They're the same because we use the base year prices and the quantities. So the base year on a test, know that it could be the nominal and the real. If we go look at 2011, there's some changes. So in 2011, we now have 4 t-shirts. Whoops. We now have 4 t-shirts multiplied by 5, so that gives us 20. We have 2 computer chips multiplied by 20, which gives us 40. And we have 6 security chips multiplied by by $40, which gives us 240. So that gives us 300. Now again, what we did was nominal, right? We did 2011 prices multiplied by 2011 quantities. The problem with that is that comparing this number to this number doesn't tell us anything because there's nothing connected between the two of them. So if you look down to our third example, this is going to be the real GDP. So it's going to be real. It's going to be 2011 quantities valued at 2005 prices. So in this setup, we have 4 t-shirts. We have the same number, right? Everything's the same. The only, if you notice, right, it's 4, 2, and 6. That was the same as here. The only real difference is going to be the prices. We're going to use these prices, which if you notice was the same as those. So we're going to use the 2005 prices. That will give us 20, 20, 120, which gives us a total of 160. So now we have a GDP or a real GDP of 160. And so what that does for us is it allows us to compare it back to here. And so now we know in the base year was 100 and now it's 160. So we can say that the GDP has increased by 60%. What we've also done is eliminated price change as part of the equation. We want our GDP to grow, but it needs to grow because our output is growing. It needs to be because we're producing the correct goods and services. If it's just the prices that are changing, we may just have inflation, and that's not what we're looking for. So again, in GDP, we're looking for real GDP. We want to compare the quantity from a given year to the base year prices back to the base year. That will give us numbers that are the same, so we can now compare them. Okay, that's for real GDP versus nominal GDP.